next part in activity 5.7, you are going to have to create a Automobilox tire. You're going to use several features in here, mid-plane extrusion, circular pattern, and a couple other dimensions that we may not have done before. So the first thing to notice is that there are no dimensions for the thickness or depth of the extrusion for this initial part. So we're just going to make one up when we go over to Inventor to make that. But if you scroll down in the activity sheet, you will notice there are diameters for the base 2D sketch. So the outside diameter is 1.65. The dimension between the outside circle and this inner circle is 0.1, and then one more concentric circle on the inside has a diameter of, or a distance between those two of 0.03. So we're going to go ahead and jump into Inventor, start a new part, and we'll start a 2D sketch on the XY plane. And I'm going to zoom out just a bit, create a circle from the origin, and that diameter should be 1.65. Then I'm going to create a second circle, concentric circle from the center point, and I'm not going to dimension. I'm going to place it approximately where it goes, and then I'm going to use the dimension command, and I'm going to dimension between those two, and that dimension should be 0.1. I'm going to go ahead and finish the sketch. I'm going to extrude that profile I just created, and I'm going to extrude it to a depth of 0.75. But what you'll notice if you go back to the activity sheet is you need to be sure to use a mid-plane or symmetric extrusion. So if we go back to Inventor, if we look at some of our options, we have direction 1, direction 2, and our third option is symmetric. So when we hit that, it'll still extrude to 0.75 total, but it'll have it and do part or half in one direction and half the other, and you can see the sketches in the center, which is what we want. And I'll hit OK, and that'll finish my tire profile. Now what I need to do is go back and edit that original sketch, but what you'll notice is it's disappeared. And that's because it's consumed by our first extrusion. So if you hit the plus sign next to extrusion, your first extrusion, you'll see that that sketch is there, and if you hover over it, it'll appear. We need to be able to edit that, but I don't want to delete this original extrusion. So in order to do that, you need to right click on the sketch and select Share Sketch. And when you do that, it'll appear back in your baseline of your browser, and then you'll also see it reappear on your screen as well. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on that sketch, and I want to go back and re-edit it. Now I'm going to jump back to the activity sheet, scroll down here, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, and you'll notice that you need to create one more concentric circle, and that dimension between the previously interior circle and the new one is 0.03, and then we're going to have to create a V pattern here. And there is also a line here in the center, and then we're going to use that line to dimension our angle of our lines. So the first thing I'm going to do is create that new interior circle, grab a circle command, and I'm just going to place that approximately where it goes. Then I'm going to grab my dimension command. I will dimension between this circle and the new circle, and that dimension should be 0.03. Hit enter. And then I'm going to grab my line command and create the V. So I'm going to start at my center point and put it approximately where it goes. Make sure it extends beyond the outside circle. Right click OK. And I'm going to do the same thing again and on the other side. Right click OK. Now I need to dimension this, the degrees between this y-axis and that part. And I don't have a way of doing that because it won't let me dimension to this axis. So I need to create one more line that is snapped to that center point that is a vertical line. And it doesn't have to extend all the way out. We're going to come back and delete it later anyways. So I'll go ahead and create that line. And then I want to dimension between that line, vertical line I created, and this right-hand side of the V, and pull this dimension out. And you'll notice that right now it's a little over 11 degrees. I want to change that to 4 degrees and hit enter. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. That center line to the right or left-hand side of the V, and I want that dimension to be 4 degrees as well. Now that you've completed that, the only thing that we're going to extrude is this small rectangular shape here in the center. So in order to get rid of everything we don't need, we're going to grab the trim command under the modify panel, and you'll notice if I hover over a section of this line, it becomes dashed. And any part of a line that's dashed when you have the trim command selected will be erased. So I'm going to click on that, get rid of that, this one there, here and here as well. these interior shapes, or interior lines rather. And I'm also going to trim the rest of this inner circle. And right click OK, and then I'm also going to right click and delete this original vertical line. And you'll notice that you just have this rectangular profile. I'm going to finish my sketch, and if I rotate this around a bit, I can see my profile in there. I'm going to use the extrude command, select that profile, and then I also, just like my previous extrusion, want to do a mid-plane extrusion to 0.75 so it goes all the way out to the edge. And this looks a little different than your example in your activity sheet, and that's fine. And I'm going to hit OK. Once I have that extrusion done, I need to pattern this around. But the first thing I want to do is get rid of this visibility on this sketch. I don't want to be able to see that anymore. So I'm going to right click on sketch 1 and uncheck visibility, and that'll get rid of it and get it out of my way. And then I need to grab the circular pattern command under the pattern panel, and I'm going to select the profile one pattern, which is just that second extrusion. And I want to select a rotation axis, but I don't have anything to select. So I'm going to cancel out of that, and I need to create an axis in the center of this to rotate around. So if you just grab the axis command and select that interior cylinder, it's going to place a rotation axis in the center. Now I can go back to my circular pattern, grab my feature that I'd like to pattern, rotate this around to select a little easier, which is that extrusion there. And then I'm going to grab a rotation axis, which is the one I just created. Now if we go back to our activity sheet and scroll down, you'll see that you need to pattern around 15 of these shapes. So I'm going to go back to Inventor, and for placement over here I'm going to type 15 and hit OK. And that patterns those all the way around. Last two things you need to do are to hide the visibility of this axis. So if I right click on the axis and uncheck visibility, it'll get rid of that. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a material to it, and I'm just going to come down here to rubber and black to add that material. You'll notice in the image that two things don't look correct. One, the image doesn't have these ribs coming all the way out to the edge, and that's fine. It should be this way. And then there's also a center line here in the middle that it shows in the picture that you do not need to create. So once you have done all these things, this part is complete. Make sure you name it appropriately. If you scroll down, it should be named tire_first initial last name, and it should be saved to your 5.7 folder.